So June 12th, next week, from the day of this recording, is when the EU happens. And we should all support it, is not what I'm going to say. I think it's important that we have this conversation. These are the 7 reasons why I'm against the Migrant Pact. And so with that said, let's get into it.
The 12-week fast-track border procedure.
Advocates argue that holding migrants at the border for a strict 12-week creates a psychological deterrent and prevents the backlog of unverified individuals from melting into European mainland. Opponents are correct that a hardline deadline could theoretically speed up administrations. However, the system completely falls apart on logistics. It assumes origin countries like Morocco or Iraq will willingly cooperate the deportations. Because the text mandates release into the public if the 12-week expires without paperwork, the pact legally codifies a ticking clock. Traffickers do not need to outsmart the system.
They just need to delay it.
I believe there are a lot of intelligent people within the EU Parliament.
You sure about that?
But
highly impractical.
You don't think that there's going to be an underground black market of that will go into Europe? Because this is crazy. 12 weeks and you can enter in the EU. I don't understand this. I don't understand how this is justified. You would think that they would make this more rigid, more strict.
You would think that
EU Parliament members will understand the sovereignty of the EU state members. As an American watching this under Joe Biden's administration and seeing thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people crossing the border, and that was only done for a couple years, I can't imagine how Europeans feel
having this done for over a decade.
You may call it more of a strict mandate. I just see something on a surface level that is just easily to manipulate.
I don't get manipulated.
I would hope that people who are in this power would understand that maybe EU citizens should come first.
Eurodac biometric tracking system.
This one's crazy to me. I mean, I think they're all a bit
unrealistic.
This one specifically, I feel is extremely nefarious. The system modernizes security by ensuring that an irregular migrant's identity, fingerprint, and facial scans are locked into a centralized European database, ending anonymous asylum shopping. Digital tracking is highly effective for gathering data, but data is not a physical barrier. While it stops a migrant from legally applying for welfare in 3 different countries, the legal mechanism simply dictates that secondary migrants must be returned to their frontline country for entry. For a nation like Poland, Eurodac does not stop crossing. It establishes a digital tracking loop that legally forces frontline states to accept returning migrants from Western Europe. Not only that, but they're creating
automated data collection.
And I don't think this is only going to be done to migrants. I think this is also going to happen to Europeans, to EU citizens. What I mean by that is there's currently 11,000
Correction, from 11,500 to 12,000
data centers throughout the world. United States has the most.
Of course!
They have about 40% of all data centers throughout the world. They have over 4,200 data centers. The UK has 510, and Germany has 510, and likelihood is there's going to be more. But I think this is going to be done to monitor and track everyone, the Orwellian state, and that scares me. And I think this should scare many of you. You see, to me, and again, this is my opinion, I see something that's happening. And I think they're going to utilize this technology. And yes, they're going to say we're using it for migrants. But I think that argument is just I truly believe that this is going to be unleashed on all of us. Could I be wrong? Sure. And honestly, I hope I am. Based upon the information, and again, it is absolutely possible. And that honestly intimidates me.
Mandatory free legal counseling.
Providing free legal aid ensures the fast-track border process complies with human rights laws and prevent the EU from facing endless human rights lawsuits in international courts.
So sue me.
Access to justice is standard legal pillar. However, by formalizing and funding this track directly at the border, the pact creates an institutional paradox. The EU claims the pact streamlines deportations, but simultaneously funds the exact legal apparatus, NGOs and activist legal networks, that will systematically appeal every single deportation. The result is a self-inflicted legal gridlock funded by European taxpayers.
Nice.
You see, the system's broken by design. The policy tries to please advocates for the open borders, and at the same time try to appease advocates for strict border.
At the same time.
By trying to do both, it creates a legal, self-inflicted gridlock that literally accomplished nothing
But waste.
your taxpayers' money. You would think they would have really thought this out thoroughly.
Well, you thought wrong.
Direct effect regulations versus domestic sovereignty.
Standardizing the rules via regulations, which apply directly, ensures that all 27 nations play by the same rules, preventing single countries from acting as weak links or creating individual loopholes.
Right.
While legal harmony sounds fair, it creates a deep democratic deficit because regulations bypass national parliament. For example, Polish voters and lawmakers have no say in how the text is integrated into domestic law. This creates a striking double standard. Law-abiding expats face rigorous domestic background checks and rising visa fees, while irregular arrivals are granted an immediate parallel legal track.
Dictated entirely by Brussels.
Damn! And that is whack!
It bypasses your sovereignty. It bypasses EU citizens, what they should and shouldn't do within their own respective countries. And not to mention people like myself who did immigrate to Poland, who did have to go through the rigorous legal background check.
This will just take a moment.
If you come here as a quote-unquote refugee and colloquially known as, there is this double standard. I understand life isn't fair, but I think being consistent, at least logically consistent, and even through the laws, should be number one. Pragmatism is very important. And the fact that you allow people who are
Migrants.
to come in and not actually go through those countries' legal process undermines those countries' sovereignty. It means that people in Brussels can literally tell countries in the EU
What you can and can't do.
Listen, you little wiseacre. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
And for me personally, that oversteps the power. The balance becomes the people who are the elites, possibly. Now, I'm not calling people in Brussels part of that. They could, but what I will say is that people's sovereignty is being eroded. And that's something that I think each and every one of us should be concerned about.
The migratory pressure exemption loophole.
The pact includes a solitary mechanism where nations under heavy pressure, such as Poland due to hosting millions of Ukrainian refugees, can be fully exempt from quotas or the €20,000 per migrant fine.
Are you sure?
The exemption clause exists, but the nuance lies in the control mechanism. This exemption is not an automatic right. It is reviewed strictly on a year-by-year basis by the European Commission. This transforms a humanitarian reality into a temporary political favor. If Poland elects a government that clashes with Brussels on unrelated policies, the Commission holds the legal authority to revoke the exemption, turning demographic stability into a political leash. Let's say Brussels wants to bring in 1 million refugees. Not Ukrainians, but refugees from all over the world. And Poland says,
No.
that means Poland is going to be fined
20 billion.
euros. And so yes, I feel that Brussels is absolutely overstepping.
Their boundaries.
Now maybe someone can argue, well, they're not going to do that. It doesn't matter if they will. What matters is they can.
We're so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
And I personally believe that EU citizens should have more of a voice than just a few people who are in Brussels.
Call me crazy.
The desperation of offshore return hubs.
Offshoring processing centers to non-EU nations shows that Europe is finally adopting external firm border control measures, similar to successful external processing models used globally.
Sure you would.
The shift towards offshore hubs is pragmatically strict, but exposes massive logical contradictions. If the Migrant Pact's internal 12-week border detention and deportation systems were actually functional, there would be absolutely no need to
Spend
billions establishing external prison camps in third-party countries. The frantic rush for offshore hubs is practical admission that the internal pact
It's a paper tiger.
What could possibly go wrong?
So in other words, by scrambling to set up offshore hubs, the EU is essentially outsourcing the problem, using a multi-billion-dollar workaround to compensate for a non-functional internal deportation framework. Instead of addressing root causes or repairing domestic processing, this strategy risks creating entirely new, unforeseen legal and logistical crises outside European jurisdiction.
I think this is really simple. If the Migrant Pact actually worked, there will absolutely be no need for external hubs. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The public safety and crime narrative.
Sociologists and mainstream media argue that crime rates are tied to poverty, lack of integration, and psychological trauma, rather than nationality or migration status itself.
Okay.
Socioeconomics factors undoubtedly influence criminal behavior globally. However, for a sovereign state and its citizens, this academic distinction is practically irrelevant. A state's primary constitutional duty is the physical protection of its own population. When the state-level border policies results in a demographic influx that directly correlates with measurable rise in violent crime, theft, and SA, explaining the reasons behind the crime does not absolve the government of its failures to protect its citizens. You see, I believe that the EU, Brussels, people who are making the decisions, they have a responsibility to keep all of you, all of us, people who live in Europe safe. I'm not a fan of the Migrant Pact because I don't see how this is really beneficial. I just see a pact where people can manipulate and be able to go over these certain rules and laws. 12 weeks isn't really that long. I would assume if there isn't any sort of feedback that they should just send these people back to where they come from. You're going to be spending all this money on third party and going to places that aren't even in the EU jurisdiction and spending arguably billions of euros. I don't know how this is going to help EU citizens or people who live in Europe. This doesn't make any sense to me. All this money is just a waste. Because maybe this is, but I don't believe the people in Brussels, I'm not saying everyone in Brussels, but a lot really have EU citizens as their priority. I'm a man that believes that actions speak louder than words. A lot of people can say a lot of things, but if there's no action behind it, who gives a f? I also believe that America, and as an American, this is hard for me to say, but I do believe America also has a certain amount of accountability. When you go into the Middle East on the false pretense of weapons of mass destruction and you destabilize the Middle East, where are these people supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? When you literally leave military grade weapons, military grade vehicles in Afghanistan, and then you have the Taliban takes over it, what do you think is going to happen? Now, what happened in the Middle East, I'm beginning to believe that another foreign country is kind of dictating what America should do. Trust me, I don't want to believe in this stuff. I don't want to think that this is happening, but when there is evidence that's being presented to me, it does cross my mind. But the most insidious thing, as I mentioned, that they created this Eurodac AI surveillance intelligence that's going to literally map out your face. So back to keeping EU citizens safe. Since 2014 through 2024, there has been an increase of
non-consensual behavior.
There has been an increase, a significant increase. I'm assuming you guys know what I'm talking about. There has been an increase in human trafficking. Not to mention, we're also seeing
crimes against minors.
Now, I'm not saying it's because of the migrants, but it is interesting to seeing that arguably when it really started happening in 2014, that these numbers has gone up. I'm not calling every migrant a criminal. I'm not saying that every single migrants are the ones that are committing these crimes. That is not what I'm saying. But is there a correlation with it? Possibly. I think there's an argument to be made. When you're having majority of young men who are coming into the EU, I don't understand when they're saying that it's going to be. And I'm not saying that as a pejorative. I'm not saying that to be insulting. I'm just using their words and what they say because they use these words to gaslight people. Because the elites, the powers that be, the peoples in Brussels, whoever they work for, it is not in the best interest for European citizens. And to be honest, it's not in the best interest for the migrants.
Do I believe Europe should show some level of humanitarian compassion? Yes.
But do I think that Europe should have an open door policy? Absolutely not.
I do recognize international law, but international law should not be used to erase national sovereignty, silence public concern, or force ordinary citizens to accept policies they never voted for.
And I know some are going to argue saying that, well, the Migrant Pact is going to help mitigate this. I disagree. When people are going to use this, I mean, you're literally creating underground business. People aren't stupid, and there are a lot of unscrupulous people out there. And because there is a lot of money to be made, of course, they're going to find ways to
overcome the obstacles.
When people who are genuinely need help, but a lot of the resources are being used for people who aren't even EU citizens, that blows my mind. because you're not creating a society where we're gonna help each other and for these people to be integrated. What you're creating is second-class citizens, in my humble opinion, which leads to resent and anger and fear, the unknown. Because I do believe that there is something nefarious happening. I do believe that something with whatever these slogans and phrases are, there might be something behind it, because I do believe that they're trying to create order out of chaos. But these aren't my words. They're the ones that are saying it. And here we are in 2026, and we're seeing it happen. It's tangible. It isn't theoretical.
For those who support open borders,
and this is my main argument, my main point. Let's say down the road, people vote in people who are genuinely far right, who are genuinely nationalists, and they are xenophobic, they are racist, and they vote in to do something that may be against your own personal beliefs. No more sovereignty for you. There's no more choice. You see, the pendulum goes both ways. And if you're only seeing it from your own advantage, from your own points of views, then how are you going to see people's other points of views when you're just being incredulous? Because this isn't about migrants. This isn't about left or right or your political views.
this is not about hating migrants. It is about the ruling class using migration guilt and moral posturing to create polarization while taking away people's sovereignty and right to self-determination. They sit in their ivory towers, virtue signal about compassion, and leave ordinary citizens to deal with the consequences.
Because I don't want us to look at people as enemies. We shouldn't dehumanize people. We shouldn't become xenophobic. Will we have disagreements? Absolutely. And I'm all for having these conversations. What I'm not for is just putting our heads in the sand or saying to other people, well, you're a far right, you're a bigot, you're a racist. Because there's something that's happening. And if you want to admit it or not, that's up to you. But for me, I want to see truth.
Like Henry David Thoreau once said,
besides fame, besides money, give me truth. So if you do like this type of content and I bring value, I do ask if you can please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and also hit that hype button, because as I always say, I'm really trying to build a community and grow with all of you. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you stayed till the end, you are true legends. And so with that said, and without further ado, let's get into it.